The hardest part about hosting a podcast isn't the actual podcast itself. It's not the interviews. The interviews should be relatively easy because you're just asking people questions. The hard part, at least for me, and hopefully you, is the scheduling and trying to get guests on at any single time and just working out with people's busy schedules. And this is especially true if you're trying to bring on notable guests or people with some caliber because they have busy schedules and a lot of times the timing is hard to work out and it requires a lot of follow-up. So here's the system that I'm gonna share with you in terms of how I follow up with all my guests to make sure that I know exactly what stage of follow-up that we are in to ensure that I actually get the max amount of guests onto my podcast, because I know it's the hardest part. And also, if you're new to this channel, my name's Justin You're Wrong, and I typically talk about real estate investing, coached over hundreds of people. But anyways, I just wanted to share this because I know it's been useful for me for my podcast and tracking guests. Now, here's the system I use. It's called Podio. Now, Podio is actually a real estate investing CRM. It's what it's mainly used for, at least to my knowledge. But I use it for podcast guests as well. And here's how it works. So looking at this page, I have a tab called Podguest. And in this tab, I can track all my guest names, all the potential guest names who I'm reaching out to. I can track the guest status, what kind of status they are in, whether I have sent the invite, whether we're scheduled, whether I'm scheduling right now, like the different statuses. How the initial invite was sent. So I know, okay, did I text them first? Did I DM on Instagram? Did I email them? Did I do both? And the reason why this is important is so that you know how to follow up with them if they don't respond. Because often the hard part about reaching out to someone, and even if you're tracking them, you can reach out to someone and then a month later, a couple weeks later, you're like, how did I even reach out to this person? Did I text them? Did I email them? And so this is a really easy way to track how you even sent the initial invite so you know how to follow up. And then you have the kind of follow-up stage, who's in charge of the guest and whatnot. But here's how it works. So let's just say I'm adding a new guest, and I'm gonna call this guest me, Justin You're Wrong. First thing in the guest status is the suggested tab. So first status in guest is suggested, meaning me or one of my team members has suggested this guest to be on. So this is the first thing you can do. The next thing, once you have a guest and once it's been approved by you or me, basically it goes out to the invite stage, whether I send the actual invite to the person directly or their team, or I try to go through a referral invite, meaning if I don't know that person, they're of a higher caliber and it's maybe a little bit harder for me to get them on my podcast, I try to think of someone who's close with them and I reach out to that person because we have a mutual friend. And a lot of times referrals work a lot better than like reaching out directly because it's cold. They don't know you. Why would they want to get on your podcast unless you have a really good pitch to them or a good offer? Now, basically I click this referral button if I go to a friend of mine, you're like, hey, like, can you introduce me to this person? I'd love to have them on my podcast. I don't know if you're willing to do it, but would help a lot. And so if that's the case, I click referral invite instead of invite sent. But oftentimes I'm reaching out to these guests directly, so it's invite sent. Once someone actually responds to me and they're like, you know what, like, yeah, I actually really want to be on, let's work on the scheduling. That's when it goes to scheduling stage. Once it's scheduled, obviously you go to scheduled. And then once it's dead, for me, dead means if I reached out to them, followed up 10 times for 10 weeks and no one has responded at all. That's when it's dead to me. And eventually we can restart that another time. Maybe we can reach out to the guest another time. But for now, there's always more guests out there. And oftentimes it's not really worth to go really hard at one guest if they're not responsive. What's the point of reaching out to them 100,000 times if there's so many other good guests out there? So that's kind of what my system looks like. But let's just say it's someone that I'm already suggested. Let's say suggested for now. How the initial invite was sent. Or let's say I'm in the invite sent stage. So I sent the invite to this guy, Justin, my name. And how did I send this invite? I either texted, probably send a group text if it's multiple people, like a couple, an Instagram DM, a group DM if it's a couple or married, whoever partnership that you want in your podcast, or I emailed them. That's kind of like the main things or main ways that I reach out to people for this podcast. You could always add more. You can modify template and add like call or whatever it is, but this is what works for me. So let's say I DM this person to be on my podcast. Now, the follow-up stage, that's for the follow-up, but there's 10 different follow-ups. And so every time, every single week, I'm following up with these guests if they're non-responsive, and I have different exact messages for each one, and I'll go over that in a little bit, but 10 follow-ups, and you can always track what stage it's in. So let's say they didn't respond for a week. Now it's time you follow up with them, follow up number 1. That's the stage, and then follow up number 2, number 3, until they actually reach out to you. So for now, I'm gonna click this off because we're in the invite stage. We have a who's in charge of the guest option, and this is very helpful even if you're solo, but especially helpful once you have a team in place. So you can say who's in charge of the guest. And for now, if you're a solopreneur, you can say, okay, I'm in charge of the guest. I'm in charge of the invite, the follow-up, all that stuff. As soon as you get a team member to do this for you, they can do this for you. So they can say, you know what? Maybe one of my team members, Barry's going to do all the follow-up, and he's going to invite and do all the follow-up until we get the guest scheduled. So for now, if you're a solopreneur, let's just say you said it to yourself. The other things that you should do is there's a guest Instagram, email, and phone number section. And this is especially helpful if you don't really know the person that well or someone else is handling your invites. You want to track the link or their profile link to Instagram so that you know, okay, this is the exact person we're trying to get. It's not a fake profile or we're not, because especially as you kind of go more notable people, these people have a lot of fakers, a lot of scammer accounts because there's a lot of people trying to impersonate them. Well, the reason why we have the link to the guest Instagram is so you know when it's time to follow up, you're reaching out to the right person, not a scammer account. Same thing, guest email, you know who to talk to, and then guest phone number. These are just references. Now, once you finish that, you can save guest right here at the bottom. So once it's saved, the coolest thing about this is I've created some type of workflow or automation, kind of semi-automation, where you get task for 10 weeks of the follow-up until you get it scheduled. So you can see right here, it's already adding task automatically for the send the initial guest invite and then add follow-up. Now these will appear right here at the bottom, but what you have to do, you got to refresh the page. So refresh the page. And now if I scroll to the bottom, look at all these tasks. It says task number 1, send the initial guest invite. So assuming you did, you can check off that task and that's due right then and there. Now every single week thereafter, follow-up number 1, follow-up number 2, number 3, number 4. And these are very helpful because these are helpful for the guests who do not respond. And for each follow-up task that I set, let's say you click this follow-up, there's a direct message that we're going to try to say to them. So here's the message. It's, hi, name. I just wanted to touch base and see if you had a chance to review my initial invitation to be a guest on the Your Wrong Show podcast. I would be honored to share your story and insights with our audience of entrepreneurs and real estate investors. And we have a specific message for each different follow-up at non-responsive stages. So let's look at this, follow-up number 7. What's this one look like? Specific name. Hope you're well. Just want to follow up and see if you made a decision about being a guest on the Your Wrong Show podcast. Love to have you on the show and introduce you to the audience. So there's specific follow-ups on every single thing. And actually, I use AI to do all these and to create the follow-up messages because I don't know copy. I'm not a professional copywriter who has perfect messages of advertising. So I used AI, artificial intelligence with ChatGPT. I just typed in give me a 10-step follow-up system for me trying to get guests on podcasts. And I had to ask a bunch of different questions to kind of solidify it and make it my own. But for the most part, you can use artificial intelligence. It's very helpful. But basically, here's how it works. Let's say someone does respond. They respond right away and we're already in the scheduling stage. Well, at that point, I can really check off all these follow-up tasks. And maybe if they say, you know what, I'm really busy right now. How about we touch bases in 2 months? Then I just delete these follow-up and I make a new task saying something like, okay, check in on Justin if he's available this month. And let's say I'm going to set this date to 2 months from now. So it's January 17th. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and let's check in March 17th or so. And I can assign this to either me or a team member to do the follow-up so that if you're actually checking Podio every single day, you'll see all the tasks that are assigned to you if you go to your homepage. But basically what I would do in that case, I would delete all these follow-up messages right here. We'll just check them off. And then I would have a specific one for what I'm trying to do for this guest because now it's more specified. But a lot of guests will not respond, especially if you're reaching out to bigger audiences of people who you don't know, which is why this follow-up system is so helpful. And I don't delete the follow-ups, or I want to make sure there's always tasks available. And I don't delete them until we actually schedule. So once we schedule, it's on the calendar where they're showing up, they've agreed to show up, that's when I'll delete all the follow-ups. But before then, all the follow-ups pretty much stay, and I'm tracking them right here every single week. I can write comments as well here for different conversations we have, oh, Justin said he's busy next 2 months. And then I can add it right there so that I know, okay, Justin's busy the next 2 months. So the next time I follow up with them, I'll know, oh yeah, that's what he said. So it's a very simple way to track your podcast guests. And when you look at it here, at any given point, you can see all the podcast guests you've invited, what stage they're in, and the follow-up stage they're in as well, as far as status and follow-up. So that's the system that I use. It's been super helpful to me. I hope this can benefit you. And also, if by chance you're a real estate investor and you want to grow your real estate investing business, I want you to go to the link below to see how I can help you. I can give you a free consultation. Just fill out the link below. But otherwise, hope you enjoy this video. Hope it was helpful. Peace.